Sungeetha, so if you look back on your career from when you started years ago, what advice would you give your younger self? What are some of the key things that you focused on, and what has been successful for you?
Thanks for the question.
Mike?
Okay, so I think that when we hear things like teamwork is the dream work, it is not a fallacy. I think when we are younger in our careers and going through the corporate rungs of growing in terms of where you want to be and where you pitch yourself, you often think of yourself as the individual. How am I getting to the next role? How can I get to CEO? How am I going to get the next best degree or that many qualifications and notches under your belt? It is certainly not about that. It is all about what you bring to the table as a team, how you understand your strategy, how you craft your HR strategy in terms of what the business requires, understanding what strengths every single person brings in a team, but also understanding what their development areas are and how you complement that, because you are only as successful as your team is. And your team is successful based on the support that you get from your business. So for me, it's not about you, the individual. Yes, we all have dreams and aspirations, but it's how you travel that journey together as a team. So that's the key learning for me as I've gone through my 15 years of HR, and making sure that as I progress in my career, that I always have a team of people that can build the organization and serve the customer.
Absolutely. And Alice, so what do you think it takes? What are the skills and traits that it takes to build a successful, future-proof HR team?
Okay, thanks for that, Annika. I think to build HR teams for the future, and teams for the future need to understand a few things. Firstly, it starts with you as a leader. I think as a leader, if you understand your own shortcomings, but more importantly, if you understand the emerging trends that are happening, you are better prepared to change what you need to change yourself, and more importantly, what needs to change as far as your teams are concerned. And the most important thing is about understanding where your people are at. You need to have the ability to understand, as an HR team, who are we supporting, where are they going, where do they need to do, what is it that is the value that we're going to create, the value that you're going to bring to the party. Who are the other stakeholders that we might need to partner with? And if you are a person that can easily understand the trends, you easily understand what is going on within your environment, you're easily to pick that up, and also be easy to understand that it also takes a while. Because I remember as a young professional, I was very impatient. I just wanted to see change. I came back from South Africa at a time where we just got our independence, and I wanted to be part of the change, and forgot that not everybody else, was seeing things the same way that one did. So one tended to be impatient. You did not bring everybody else around because you assumed everybody knew exactly where they needed to go. Everybody saw things the way you saw them. And I also realized that it was not always the right thing. So the trace is really understanding the context in which you are operating. Understand the people you are with. Where are they going? What do they need to be able to take that extra, to go that extra mile and go with you? And more importantly, ability to listen. Because to understand where people are at, you need to listen. And when you're an impatient person, sometimes listening is not the best of the abilities that you have. So listening for me and talking, understanding where people are at, was really what helped me.
I think that's absolutely critical. And then, of course, to help and to guide when times are hard.
Yeah.
Shirley, how do you help teams thrive when times are tough, as they tend to be? And especially with the agile world that we are living in, with things changing at a horrendous pace.
I think what is important is always to be mindful of engagement. I mean, it's very easy to engage people when things are really going really well and you're celebrating successes. But I think in tough times is probably when people need even more engagement to encourage them. And I think the other fundamental is that we really need to focus on how we make our teams change fit. because there is so much change, both internally. Certainly, if you look at our company, we're undergoing global transformation, which is really tough. We know the dynamics of digital disruption, technology, what it's doing to our workplace. So people are trying to cope with this constant change in their internal work environment as well as externally what's happening outside. So I think the more you can equip your workforce with the tools and help them with the change, the constant rate of change, and keep engaging them. But engage them in different formats. Don't always make it just that quick email. They need to create different channels for communication, because some people feel comfortable in a face-to-face. Some people feel better doing it in a group session. And so you need to create that opportunity for people to engage. And I think with that engagement, you should make sure that your leaders, your managers are equipped to deal with that engagement. Because engagement, after all, is not just the CEO and the HR's problem. It's every single manager in the workplace.
That is so true. Leading by example is absolutely critical, so that it goes through to all levels. Sungeetha?
No, I definitely agree. And like you said, it's everybody's problem, right, in terms of engagement. So it's not only a leader, it's not the CEO, the CRO, etc. If you see an issue that's going on in the teams, it's our obligatory virtue to ensure that we are talking to people and making sure that we are helping them, especially in this day and age. I mean, coming to work in South Africa is just such a tenuous task in the morning. You've got to think about crime, you've got to think about your safety, your kids' safety, etc. And then you still got to come in and put a full 8 hours in. I mean, there's bound to have issues in terms of your own health, your own, your mind, etc. So you have to ensure that we are here for each other, as opposed to making sure you escalate the issue and hope somebody else will take care of it.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Sorry, Alice?
No, sorry. Yeah. I think it's interesting that we bring the issue of engagement, and often we think engagement is about telling people what's going to happen, without really trying to understand what the needs are. We often focus on the rational side of the journey, because we've been taught, there are steps to managing a journey. As long as you've got a business case, people must understand why the change. We often forget to understand what are people actually feeling about the change, because we are dealing with human beings who have feelings, human beings who can rationalize. And in most cases, we then have wondered, why are people not coming with us? Because we've got a tight business case. But do we really know how people are feeling about the change? Do we actually give people the space to understand? Because when it comes to dealing with change, it's not about your technical skills that you have. Are people resilient enough to because stress will always be there, as we heard this morning. It's about how do people then navigate and deal with the fears and the stresses of the time. And also, how do you build hope for people? Because as human beings, what we need more than anything is hope. We talked about the world that we're living in, where the workplace is being disrupted. Why are people fearful? It's because we have only painted the picture about, the robotics will be taking place. Routine work is going to be things of the past. Have we actually talked to people about this is an opportunity for you to really deconstruct yourself, reinvent yourself, and therefore let's look at what it is that you need to do. Because most cases, we're focusing on the roles that are going to go away. We're not focusing on what are the capabilities that are required. So really, I think how we engage becomes really important, because it's about what are we engaging on that really matters. Yeah.
I think further to what Alice is saying, it's also true when people, your employees are looking at their career development, but often, gone is the day where your development is just a hierarchical kind of promotion every step of the way. There are many ways to look at development, and sometimes in that kind of climate, if you engage your employee on exploring new horizons or expanding their current role, sometimes it's changing track. I look at myself. I spent most of my career in on the commercial side, in sales and marketing and managing business units, and it's only 5 years ago that I switched to HR, which some would argue is fairly late in my career. So I think that also gives people hope, because if they've only got a one-dimensional, this is what my career needs to be. Sometimes when you show them that there are other opportunities, it makes them look at the workplace and look at their work a little bit differently. And it's very important to know in terms of your business strategy what the future will hold, as Alice commented on, because you need to actually look at your workforce planning to ensure that you are developing the capabilities that are going to make your organization successful into the future. And that would start with where are you currently at in terms of your capabilities, and then looking at obviously what are the must-win battles that you need to do and need to accomplish along the way. So sometimes you open up doors for people in terms of career opportunities that they never envisaged or they didn't see for themselves, and that then makes them highly motivated because you take them on different developmental paths.
Absolutely. I think it's such an opportunity for HR professionals to play a critical role because the opportunities are plentyfold.
Yes.
And if you look at people's unique skills and you empower them so that they can contribute from their unique perspectives and make the most of automation, it'll free us up to have much more conversations.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah, I think just linking on to what you're saying, Annika, if you read the list of relevant jobs in the next 10 years, doctors, lawyers, tellers in banks all have become obsolete, right? So they won't exist in 10 years because everything can be done by surgery. But if you look what's made the list, it's actually HR practitioners. Because as Alice said, we are human beings dealing with human beings. And when something's going wrong in your life, if you are defrauded in your bank account or whatever, you're not going to be dealing with a robot if someone's touching your money. You're going to want to deal with somebody sitting across from you that can look you in the eye and say, this is the problem. So I think from an HR upskilling and being relevant consistently, that is the job that we have to ensure that we as HR practitioners really keep up to the standard and make sure that we are leading businesses in terms of what is required from a future's capability perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this also talks to, as HR, we need to stop seeing ourselves as a function within a business. We are business people, really pioneering the people agenda. The business cannot be a business without people. I read a research the other day where a group of CEOs were asked, with all the resources at your disposal and all the opportunities that you have, what is one thing that you think is going to give you the value you deserve? And they all said technology. And then there was another research that was done. They actually found out that people will actually deliver 2.5 times the value that technology will. So what that means is it's about the collaboration between people and technology. So as you do your work right now, you need to start saying yourself, what is it that I can do better than the machines, than the robots, as we are told, because you'll never, ever, replace a human being. But at the same time, you need to embrace that technology is going to make our lives much better, much more fulfilling. It will help it making sure our businesses are much more successful. So if you want to really be, future-proof, is to say, okay, what is it that I'm good at? Better than the machine, and that's where we need to go as HR. And for many, many years, we've been told that HR is supposed to be strategic. And that is the time to really say, this is an opportunity to really be more strategic, because all the other work that's repetitive that we're spending time on will now be done, using AI, algorithms, all the stuff that we're already experiencing. So that is my, what I would say to you. What is it that as a human being we do better than machines? And as an HR practitioner, what does that mean for myself?
I think in terms of future-proofing, I would agree, focusing on that, understanding the business strategy is so important. And I think we're not in the finance Indaba, so I can say this, but I think, there's a session tomorrow on the alignment between the CEO and the CHRO, and I think it's very important because irrespective of the level of automation or AI that's coming on, you're going to have a people element. And yes, the roles might change. So some roles might be made redundant, but you're going to need new roles and new capabilities. So it's very important to keep in tune with the business and understand all aspects of the business, because remember, with automation, it's coming in all departments, in all sections of the business, whether it's in finance, in compliance, in HR, it's across the business. So I think future-proofing HR also requires that agility to be able to support and help the functions as they also navigate these waters in terms of new systems that they have to manage, whether it's human capital, whether they have to be actively involved in the recruitment processes online. We can really add our support if we make and facilitate these processes for our teams that we service and support.
Absolutely, and you just have to look around in today's technological day and age, look at the younger generation to realize how much more important the human touch is going to be.
Yes.
And I think we find ourselves in a very interesting construct as HR practitioners currently, because never before and never after will we manage 4 generations in a workplace, from your baby boomers, your generation X, Y, millennials, and how do we solve for gig economy workers, etc. So our job is just not the transactional stuff that we have become good at, but it's how do we start changing the face of the business, because they are certainly not thinking about things that we have become aware of, and they need that guidance in terms of how do they navigate the workforce of the future.
That's so powerful, Sungeetha, because diversity and inclusion becomes critical. We talk about what are some of the traits that we require. It's about valuing diversity, because and knowing how to manage diversity, because as you say, we're going to be managing not only different generations of employees, but different employees with different needs, different employee types. Therefore, how do you then manage contract? What kind of relationships are you going to have with different type of employees? That takes a bit of creativity. We've all heard about the forces of this age that we live in, the 21st century. We need to be very creative. We will need to improve our communication. People understand it, because as we know, employees are used to all of us. Fairness means we all have the same benefits. But in the future, because technology not only talks to productivity and making sure that we get the better channels, better products, new business models, or even new businesses being developed, it's also about being customer-centric. So as an HR practitioner, you need to really treat your employees as your customers. And what does that mean? It means they have different needs. You have to personalize. Algorithms in the age of technology. Even now you are followed. If you just Google something, the next time you go online, because everything is so personalized, it's about you. How do we then personalize? Benefits, personalize the way we treat people, personalize the way we develop people, yet we are managing so many. Those are some of the things we need to start looking at. So really, to be able to do that, as you said, is understanding the diversity that you're working with. So that's really, critical.
I think I can echo what you say on diversity, because diversity, if you're cognizant of diversity will also help you in terms of diversity of thinking. So when you include multi-generational, put heads together to try and find solutions, you're likely to come with a much better outcome if you've got the diversity of thinking. And I think we have to, if I go back to the engagement component, if you're engaging your multi-generations and your different employees in the workplace, you will be looking at those areas that are important. So for example, even with your e-learning, you'll bring in the gamification as an option, because you are catering to the different generations. So yes, maybe my generation will go for the tried and trusted, but you also have the option where you're taking them through a learning module, but in a game with gamification. So you've got to, it helps a lot, obviously, if your company is supportive of that and providing you with the frameworks and the systems and encouraging it, because then you are going to be more agile as an organization, and you are going to be successful if you are enhancing the environment that your employees work in. And I think, I found that too, engaging when you are, in one of the earlier sessions, they were talking about flexibility in the workplace. But you need to have then, representative body, and through our employee forums, what does it mean? Because it means different things to different people, and you have to see how you can have some kind of basic principles within a framework that in an SOP or policy that actually then does cater for different people's needs, because we're all at different life stages, we're different generations, we've got different needs, and we've tried to do that even in some of our reward and recognition, where we found it's not just always monetary reward, but when we achieved some company target, we'd give our employees the afternoon off, because time is precious for everybody. And that resonated much more with the entire workforce than, the tried and trusted forms of recognition that one tends to do. So I think you've got to be open and receptive to all these different ideas. You've got to be proactive about, in terms of understanding your strategy and use the technology that is available to you. Be relevant. You've got to be relevant for your customers.
Definitely. Have you got some more practical examples? You've mentioned some great things in terms of your basics that you put in place in terms of building your future-proof HR teams and the things you need to be cognizant of. Have you got some practical examples of steps that you've taken or initiatives or things that you've done within your respective organizations?
Okay. Well, I'll talk about the recent ones. It was the move as we started experiencing the change in technology and the need for actually automizing some of the processes. Initially, when we started introducing the automation, we were talking about systems. We then realized it was not about systems. We needed first to educate people in terms of what does that mean in terms of the ways of work. What does that mean in terms of how my job is going to change? What does that mean in terms of relationships? What is now the new operating model? Because when you start moving to a shared services center, automizing your processes, the HR operating model, really becomes an ecosystem where it's not just people sitting within HR that are participating in terms of people. You've got the manager who now is self-help. You've got the employee who also must manage their own data, manage their own transactions. And then you've got HR who is sitting and making sure that the processes are not only work, but it's processes that are intuitive, that are actually giving a better process. And then we realize that don't just talk system, teach people how to use the system and think we've arrived. We realize that may help them understand the context and then introduce the system. The system is just an enabler. How intuitive, the kind of experience, and whether it does add value. Does it make my work easier now, or is it really becoming more cumbersome than it was before? And then that's what we did. So educate, and then we made sure that we involved the users. Again, normally when we use users, it's because we want to make sure that it's a system that works for good, for endurance, rather than let's prototype, let's use something that's going to evolve. So we started bringing different people to say, we're just going to get it going, and it's going to be an iterative process where we're going to build together and we evolve as we go along, getting feedback, and then we continuously go that. And we found that when we did that, when people also saw things changing as a result of their feedback, they thought, okay, this is really about making my life easier. It's not just another process that HR has come up with, and I'm just supposed to adhere to the system. It's about helping me, enabling me to actually bring the best value that I can as an employee. So those were some of the steps and we continue to evolve the process as we go along.
I think agility is so important.
Yeah, and I think just building on from what Alice said, we've done the same at Absa where we work. But in addition to that, from moving from transactional and operational to the strategic and making sure you've earned your seat at the table, as HR practitioners, we've actually lost the ability to coach leaders. We have lost the ability to understand emotional intelligence around the table, and we started focusing solely on what the intelligence quotient is. And what we've done for our teams from an HR perspective is make sure that they go on coaching courses so that they can actually coach business leaders of the future, bring in new generations, and how do you actually make them adapt to the organization that you're working in, because working in a big corporate is a big scary thing for many people. And how do you actually stay close and understand exactly what is going on from an emotional intelligence perspective in the business? And I think that's what we found great value in, and the feedback from our business is to say that you actually understand who I am. I'm not a number. I know I have to make the numbers, but you understand where I come from, you understand my family dynamic, you understand where I want to go to, and how do we bring the collective together, ensure that the business is growing, but myself as an individual is also going to go places. So that has been key critical for us from an HR perspective.
That's absolutely important. And so if we look at that, and if we fast forward, what do you think HR is going to look like in the future? How do you think it'll evolve, and what do you think the future will look like in terms of the role, more critical so than ever, in the fourth industrial revolution? What do you think the human resources business will look like?
I think you're going to have to be very strong on workforce planning. That's kind of key. And I think you've got to also, but it probably goes without saying, is you've got to have strong talent strategies, which maybe are not just local but global. And if you are working for a global company, it does make it easier when you have enablers such as systems like Workday, which we've got, where you can dip into a global talent pool. So we know we've got our challenges in the South African context, but theoretically, anybody joining our company can apply for jobs anywhere in the world if they've got the right kind of qualifications and the right kind of career aspiration. And I think that the accountability is on the individual employee to keep that career profile updated, to communicate the development they're looking for. And we also support it with what we call the quality conversations, which is the trend that's happened globally with some of the top companies like Accenture and Deloitte, whereby you give that real-time feedback. So the generation in the workplace now doesn't want to wait for that mid-year review. I've just done a project, I've just finished it, they want the feedback now, because then they can address it. You become far more agile if you can work and constructively address some of the gaps, or you get the praise and recognition from that in real time. So I think you've got to move with the times in terms of providing that real-time feedback, because the generation is impatient, they want to get ahead and they want to move along. And I think what is really nice about it is that it opens it up. So I'm not just relying on my manager's feedback on me for my progress in my career. It's augmented by anybody within the organization. I mean, myself, I got feedback from a representative to my manager on an interaction that I had. And so you've got to build that confidence that I am, no matter who I am in the organization, I can give feedback on an interaction or engagement that I've had. And that speaks then to, I think, the EQ, because we focus so much, if I look back in my day, I was so focused on acquiring the capabilities and the competencies in terms of the technical component. But you don't realize, and when you look back, you realize how important that EQ component is. And so now we tend to be focusing a lot more on leadership behaviors, because we see what the impact of leadership behaviors is on the organization, whether you're implementing the systems or managing the teams or driving the projects and teamwork and collaboration. So I think future it's going to be more EQ, and even our, if we look at our performance, we have a very strong component to it. It's not just the what, it's the how, which is equally as important in evaluating our future stars or our future leaders.
Yeah, you raise a number of exceptionally valuable points. It really is. It presents us with such opportunities. If you look at optimizing technology, increasing the human touch, and just making the most of it, and ensuring that your employees feel empowered to contribute.
And I think what's important is it goes back to the employee experience. And we're so quick to jump to what is the EVP and what is the CVP and all those fancy abbreviations. But if you ask yourself, have you actually created the EVP for the place that you work in? It actually starts with you, right? Because if you're the HR individual that a new employee is walking in and introducing himself to and meeting you, you are the EVP of the place that you work in. And I think we place so much of focus on somebody's going to do it out there and come with the EVP and then we're all going to follow. It doesn't work like that. right? So for me, it's key in terms of what is the employee experience that you want to create. And then we say we want to measure customer experience, but we are all the customers of the place that we work in. And how do we measure that on a regular basis? Annual surveys are not going to help you at all. We have to take the pulse of the organization that you're working in on a monthly basis so that you are not reactive, you are proactive. So when you get one big survey that measures everything from your culture to your proposition to whatever it is that you're measuring, you're not going to be hit with something that's so big that you don't have the budget to fix it, that you actually don't have any appetite to even want to look at it, and you park that survey aside. So social pulse surveys have to be taken on a regular basis. I know IBM does that really well. They do it every month and they fix their issues on a monthly basis. So I think the employee experience starts with every one of us. It's within our gift to give, and we need to give that really well.
That's very true. And coupled with meeting the customer, who are the employee expectations, I think there's going to be more demand put on HR by the business leaders in terms of helping the business to navigate this digital world, but more importantly, to reap the benefits of what this digital world promises. So you'll find that we will not only be working with customers internally, we are employees, we'll need to help the business identify those strategic partners outside so that we can bring and understand what's outside and what it is as an organization we can best offer. So as an HR practitioner, it then becomes your role to manage stakeholders, not only internally but externally. It will also be about the value that you're actually bringing. When you'll be required to actually contribute in those business decisions, help the business to come up with solutions to the business. So it will not just HR as usual as we know it. HR really truly becomes a people agenda. And being the conscious of the organization, it's being aware of what's happening in the communities where we're working. How are we? Because I think we need to make sure that we're the conscious and make sure we're responsible as far as the benefits of this digital economy. We do not leave the majority of the people behind. So as an HR practitioner, you also you're the one that is the change champion. Change champion not only for your company, but for your country, for the world. So we need to make sure that, as I say, those soft skills, which before we were not taken seriously, those become the hard skills. And we are the best people, I think, positioned to help organization to really navigate this digital environment.
Sorry, Annika, and just to close off that point, we talk about instant gratification and everything needs to be done at the touch of a button. As human beings, we also want instant gratification. So if you look at your company's reward policies and getting an annual bonus, those things don't work anymore. It's generational. Share schemes are generational. The new gig economy workers want instant gratification. Pay me to do a specific piece of work, I will do it. If you want to give me something extra, great, but I'm going to move on. So if you haven't captured me when I'm doing my piece of work, then I'm not going to stay here. And I'm not waiting a year for my bonus. So how about we look at micro bonuses where we reward teams as opposed to working towards individual bonuses where we then encourage competition, which is not always fair. So those are the practices that I think are quite staid, and we need to refresh and say, how do we move forward as HR practitioners? And your CEO is not going to come up with that. They're looking to you and to all of us to direct those conversations.
I just want to pick up a comment on the change as well, and the change management, because I think that with all these systems that are coming in all aspects of the business, is that we fall into the trap of installing the system and not implementing. And the difference between installation and implementation is really that when we implement fully, we actually meet the business and the human objectives, and we measure and manage that. And I think, like with a lot of systems, here it is, go. But we don't go that full mile and actually check that we've met the business objectives through this new system, and also the people and human objectives. Definitely. So I think that is very important, because then you will really ultimately be successful. And it's easy to set those measures, so that you can manage it.
Role of HR, great opportunity, huge responsibility.
Yeah.
1, 2. Hi. I think we all believe what you've been saying around the role that HR practitioners will play in the future. My more general question is, what if the executive of your company has not bought into that concept yet? So how do you, as an HR practitioner, I'm looking for practical tips, how do you help your executive come to the realization that the people capital is actually the most valuable capital? How do you help, how can we help our executive come to that realization?
Sure. I wouldn't like to think there are HRs, I mean, there are CEOs that don't believe in the role and the importance of HR, because then I would try and get them to the session tomorrow where it talks about that close alignment between your HR exec and your CEO. But I think it is important to make sure that there is very close alignment there, because you're making decisions on people and their career, and you've probably got to show practical support and show them, I think through your analytics and that kind of thing, in terms of with the workforce planning, showing you understanding the strategy and really making a difference. There are lots of different ways, if I think about it. So you've got to tune into your, and we get different types of CEOs. You get the one that's the driver type, the A-type personality. We get the more analytical type. So you've got to actually find that connection to show the value. And I guess it's, if we have the systems, and we are fortunate to have them, like things like a Workday, is to be able to use that to show the analytics and show the impact of that and try and show them the measures. I mean, I can't understand how you wouldn't have that alignment, because when we set our annual objectives, they align with our CEO, we set them together. In terms of, yes, I would pick up more of the people issues, and obviously commercial side of the business picks up more of the quantitative and driving the business results, but they're so integrated. And I think that, if it filters down throughout the organization, we have patients, obviously pharmaceuticals, so thankfully we do have patients as our number one priority, but we also we have 4 priorities, and everybody speaks that language, which is then, building trust with our communities, enhancing our reputation. Only 4th is the business and driving the business results. So I think you have to check what the alignment is strategically and make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then you have to really show how you in your HR role will make a meaningful difference. I think at the end of the day, we all want to be valued. It doesn't matter what we are doing within the company. The moment we feel valued, we feel empowered, and we're highly engaged, and we do more and all those good things. So I think it's finding that way to show how you can make the difference with the people in some way aligned to your strategic priorities and your strategic roadmap.
And in doing so, helping your CEO achieve her or his strategic priorities.
Yeah, and I think sometimes in reality you measure up too, because you help them with the people issues, because in their role they're going to have to deal with people issues. And if you are there to step beside them and help them manage and navigate difficult people issues, you are going to have that close alignment, and you are going to build trust. I mean, you build it through connectivity and through being consistent, and to really engaging with your CEO.
My name is Judith. I just wanted to check. You say you need to build trust with the communities. If you look at our communities, it's changing drastically. Our communities need more and more. They now cry for saying we need jobs in our community, not to open to other people. So how can we handle that?
I think you've got to also look at your primary interface in terms of the communities that you serve. So obviously we're in the healthcare business, so it's patients in all sectors, and you look at how and what you have to offer. And I think that's aside from even the CSR initiatives. I think every company is involved in CSR initiatives, and that goes a long way to support and help communities. But I think when you're also talking about communities, what business are you in? It's important to understand that, because yes, I think living in an environment like South Africa, there's so much need. But at least if you start somewhere and you start making a difference, to the communities that you are serving. Because for us, we've got patients through the full spectrum. It's not just patients who are insured, have medical aids and that kind of thing. It's patients throughout the public and the private sector. So how can you help them? It means trying to find different business or access models to your products. So I think it's just understanding the communities that you're involved with and trying to make a difference to them.
Sungeetha?
I think just building onto that, we also engage from a banking industry perspective with the President's YES program, and where that creates employment opportunities for individuals between the ages of 18 and 28. So given that at Absa we hire 40,000 people, if you look at in our frontline, we turn over 2,000 every year. From that, we've allocated numbers for people in the communities to come in and work at the bank. We train them, we upskill them in terms of banking, we keep the ones we want, we flood the market with skills that are not necessarily there, but we create those opportunities for people to thrive. So it's not necessarily making sure we go to every university and get the cream of the crop, because we all don't start at the top, we start at the bottom. And how do we, as responsible corporate citizens, engage with the government programs that we have on board with your learnerships and your CETAs, and make sure that you reach communities that are not readily accessible, like your Alex, etc. You go to Mpumalanga and Popo, and make sure you create opportunities there. And creating opportunities is not even necessarily working in a bank. It's creating learning hubs, it's creating schools, it's building on stuff. And those are the opportunities that people are hungry for.
And I think I really agree with that comment. You know, also things for us obviously would be like trying to better understand patient advocacy groups, you know, in terms of some of the areas and the therapeutic areas that we serve. But I think also through your CSR programs, we've tried to not just say here's a donation of money, but we've involved our employees in making blankets. So we take the whole day off and we make blankets, and then we take them to the creche in one of the creches, and we do annually, we try and do some activity where it's more meaningful, that our employees are actually involved in that, and they go and actually have a direct interface with some of the communities close to us. Does that answer your question?
Alice,
Question is answered.
you want to make a comment?
No, the question is answered. I won't labor the point. Yeah.
Thank you. Part of the emerging trends for HR practitioners with the Industrial Revolution is the whole notion of data analytics. How do we get HR practitioners to switch off from measurement to analytics?
That's a very good question. I think that's why it's called the information age, right? I think, again, it's about learning and unlearning. All of us would have to understand what are those metrics that really matter to the business. Remember, we spoke about there is more pressure now to really demonstrate what is the value that we are bringing to the business, but more importantly, what is it that we are doing that's helping the business to also make the right decision so they can, the business can prosper and everybody else with the organization. So it will be about training people to understand that we have got all this massive data. How do I then put my data in a meaningful way that will help whoever requires that data to make the right decisions, to make right trends so that they can introduce new products. So as HR, it's something that never actually came naturally for us, because we're always told that we are just personnel. We are just a nice company. That's why I'm saying we need to stop seeing ourselves as just an HR function that's just there to support. We are part of the business. And as a business, what do you use analytics for? To make sure that you remain competitive, to make sure you make the right decisions. But it's also just not data for the sake of data. It's about getting the right data, packaging it in a way that's really, truly meaningful. Otherwise, it's just information. So we just need to learn. It's one of those skills, those capabilities that we need to learn.
And I think when you see the benefits of utilizing the data optimally.
And I think just a comment on that is that I think you need to be able to use your analytics to help you be proactive. You don't want to be reactive in the marketplace, you want to be competitive. So your dashboard, if you're going to set up an HR dashboard or whatever dashboard, you shouldn't do it in isolation. You should understand what the business strategy is so that your dashboard is meaningful to be able to help you be successful going forward, whether it's looking at the right capabilities when you are launching new products, or what are the must-win battles that you have to, and by when, which time frame. So I think your dashboard and what you're going to measure and what you're going to get out of your analytics needs to be done as a team and strategically. to help you be proactive and develop the right kind of strategy.
And I think
Thank you.
that's a very good point, because it means that you now integrate that analytics into the business analytics. It's not HR analytics, it's business analytics. So that's important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.